Hi again. So the US is ramping up its threats against North Korea over the secretive country's latest missile test. In fact, within the past hour, Donald Trump now has vowed consequences over what he described as a very, very bad behavior. It follows Washington's UN ambassador telling the Security Council that the US indeed was ready to use military action if necessary. Caleb Mopen reports.
Speaking to the 15-member body here in Manhattan at the United Nations headquarters in the Security Council chamber, U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley spoke strongly not just against North Korea, but against any country that she felt supports them. Now, in her statements largely condemning the recent launch of a missile, she went as far as to threaten the use of military force, utilizing military options.
The United States is prepared to use the full range of our capabilities to defend ourselves and our allies. One of our capabilities lies with our considerable military forces. We will use them if we must.
The United States will soon submit a draft resolution to the UN Security Council, and U.S. leaders say that if this resolution is not passed, they will take action on their own. The Russian envoy, he also spoke to the UN Security Council, and he said that sanctions are not the way out of the crisis.
Sanctions cannot be a cure-all, and this has been demonstrated by history. So what we need here is to seek a political solution and be creative in our diplomacy. We've proposed, as I've said in my statement, to work collectively.
There has been a proposal from both Russia and China to de-escalate the situation on the peninsula, with not only North Korea ending its nuclear proliferation and its testing of missiles, but also the United States getting rid of this THAAD missile system in the south and ending their provocative military exercises with South Korea. So a lot of different proposals being made. The world is waiting to see this resolution that U.S. leaders spoke of.
On Wednesday, South Korean and US forces fired their own missiles into the Sea of Japan. That's believed to be a warning shot towards North Korea. American officials said afterwards that similar weapon systems could be, quote, easily deployed to the region as a deterrent. While North Korea's launch has put nations on edge, RT's been hearing from some analysts about how it could be America's response next then that could risk pushing the crisis into war.
The North Korea launched a missile that wasn't intended to hurt anyone, and it did not hurt anyone. And what we saw at the United Nations today was the continuation of the spectacle in which the United States and her increasingly few allies are using that international body of peace as a kind of global apartheid to justify and rubber stamp wars and sanctions which amount to war. They're going to be watching today's proceedings. They're going to hate the United States even more than they already do. They'll see Russia and China as countries which don't necessarily always agree with them, countries which aren't allies to them, but countries which do not wish them and their people harm. They're countries that want to engage in peace. They're countries that could end up saving North Korea from American aggression, and they will smile upon that, surely.
They're not provoking the international community. That's the spin based on Washington's dominance in the international community at the United Nations. Just 3 weeks ago, the United States carried out a nuclear bomb dropping drill that simulated the nuclear destruction of North Korea. Nobody called that provocative. When North Korea sends off a missile test saying we're not going to be bullied, that's provocative. So, you know, the question, the narrative of North Korea's provocations and provocative activity in the face of the United States and South Korea carrying out the largest war exercises in the world, simulating the destruction, the invasion and destruction of North Korea, while that's never considered a provocation, that just doesn't ring true. That's a double standard, and we need to stop accepting the dominant narrative offered by Washington.
Let's go back now to one of our top stories, that forthcoming G20, well, happening over the next couple of days in Hamburg. Ken Livingstone's back on the line now. I'm very pleased to say, the former mayor of London. We've got a good connection to him now, hopefully. Hi, Ken. Thanks for being live with us again. Don't think you heard this the first time round. I don't know what you think about it, but does it strike you as a bit odd that a collection of the, ironic even, should we say, collection of the wealthiest, predominantly capitalist nations meeting in a city, Hamburg, known for being pretty left-wing? Good choice or not?
I mean, all cities seem to be a bit left-wing because mayors have to be innovative, they have to spend, they have to invest. But that's the way you run your local economy. If you can't get that right, your city will fail.
Of course, Boris Johnson wouldn't agree with you on that one, would he? Now, the protests got going even before any leaders arrived in Hamburg. How far might they go during the summit?
Well, I don't know what's going to happen in all of that. The simple fact is, Germany has been a very good nation over this last 70 years in terms of investing, bringing most of its people together. More than most other European nations, they've kept the jobs that working class people had. Their manufacturing is 2.5 times the size of Britain. So there will be, I'm sure, dissent and opposition and protest. But I think actually Germany has got a very good record of actually securing for all its people.
Yeah, most of these demonstrators insist they're holding peaceful rallies, but there has been violence. The police say they've seized weapons. How difficult is it for security to get this right balance here, i.e. to allow people the right to protest on one side without it turning ugly and getting out of hand on the other? It's a tricky balance, isn't it?
Well, I mean, the thing is, if a protest is determined to be violent, you've got to make sure that doesn't happen. But a peaceful protest, that should never be interfered with. The police should never block it. When I was mayor for I'd been mayor for about a year in 2001, and an anarchist group in London was planning a rally that in Oxford Street, our biggest shopping centre, they were going to go down that street and smash all the windows. So I got the police to control them by corralling them, keeping them in one tight little place for about 10 hours, and then they staggered off tired and home to bed. We did not allow them to go down the street smashing all the windows. But I mean, very few protesters turn out with a determination to be violent, and very often the violence that happens at a demonstration is because police tend to block a peaceful demonstration. They're working for the establishment and not recognising the right of people to protest.
From what you see of these kind of things, every G20 there are always protests. Yeah, what's your take on the percentage of genuine bona fide protesters out there and just serial troublemakers that go along to these things to try and stir it up?
Well, I've been going on protests ever since the war in Vietnam, and overwhelmingly they have always been peaceful. We've occasionally, we had 1 million people, at least perhaps 2 million, protesting against Tony Blair's decision to invade Iraq, and no violence whatsoever. But you do get small angry groups from the far right, the far left, or anarchist groups, or you remember the Baader-Meinhof gang in Germany back in the 1960s, who were doing violence. You've got to concentrate on those that are coming out there to smash buildings, or even in some cases to kill.
OK, let's focus on the meeting itself. What's going on behind those doors? How tricky is it going to be to get the G20 leaders even on the same page here? Chancellor Merkel laid into the US for not being cooperative. There are rifts between the US and China, rifts between Turkey and the EU. Wow. Is it going to be, I'd love to be a fly on the wall of that place. How difficult is it going to be to get everyone singing off the same page, or is that not the point? Is the point just to get everyone talking?
Well, what I found interesting here, you've got mayors from all around the world. There's a huge consensus and agreement. Mayors are doing things to tackle the problems of climate change. Most governments are slow to react. I'm almost beginning to think it's time to abolish governments and just let the world be run by large cities. I mean, if you're a mayor, you're living in your city, you're aware of its problems, you know you need to tackle them. Too many presidents and prime ministers live in a sort of academic world where they're debating ideas and theories, and very often get caught up in wars that are completely unnecessarily, like in Iraq and in Libya.
Ken, thanks for your thoughts. We'll let you get back to your business. I think you're in Moscow today. Ken Livingstone, former Mayor of London. Thank you.